Twins begged their father not to wake the sleeping woman at the gate, unaware she was their lost mother. Season 2. A week after Naomi began settling into the rhythm of the Carter home, trouble arrived in heels. It was late Saturday morning when the sound of a car door closing echoed through the front drive. Naomi was in the sitting room, helping Noelle color a school poster, while Nia read quietly beside the window. Miss Loretta had just gone to check on lunch when the front door opened, and a woman stepped inside, as if she had every right to. Her name was Veronica Steele. Veronica was one of the women Evelyn Carter favored most, polished and fashionable, with the kind of beauty that looked carefully maintained. She was in her early 30s, always perfectly dressed, always perfectly composed, and she carried herself with the smooth confidence of someone who expected admiration before she spoke a word. Noelle looked up first. "Oh," she said, not sounding excited. Nia lowered her book. "Grandma's friend is here." Veronica's smile appeared immediately. "Not just your grandmother's friend, sweetheart." She bent slightly, careful not to wrinkle her cream-colored dress. "I brought gifts." That got Noelle's attention, though only for a second. Veronica handed each girl a shiny bag with tissue paper peeking out the top. Nia thanked her politely. Noelle did too, but Naomi noticed something in the twins' faces. It was not joy. It was the practiced politeness children use when they know they are expected to be nice. Then Veronica's eyes moved to Naomi. The smile stayed on her lips, but the warmth left it. "And you must be the guest I've heard about." Naomi rose to her feet. "My name is Naomi Brooks." Veronica gave a small nod, as though the name itself had not impressed her. "Veronica Steele." Noelle leaned close to Naomi and whispered, not quietly enough. "She says her full name like she's in an award show." Naomi pressed her lips together to keep from smiling. At that moment, Evelyn Carter entered from the hallway. Elegant and controlled as always, she seemed relieved to see Veronica. "Veronica, dear," Evelyn said, "you're right on time." Then, with only a brief glance toward Naomi, she added, "The girls have been keeping busy." Veronica's gaze returned to the twins. "I can see that." A few minutes later, Malcolm joined them. Something subtle changed in the room when he appeared. Veronica stood straighter, her voice softened, her whole expression turned bright and effortless. "Malcolm," she said warmly, "I was hoping I'd catch you at home." Malcolm gave a polite nod. "Veronica." Naomi noticed it right away. He was courteous but not eager, respectful but not warm. Veronica, however, seemed determined to create a picture. She asked about his week, commented on the weather, laughed a little too quickly at something that wasn't funny, then turned to the twins with a carefully timed sweetness. "And how are my favorite girls?" Noelle looked down into her gift bag. "You say that every time." Nia added, "You only see us when Grandma brings you." The room went still for half a second. Veronica laughed lightly, but Naomi saw the flicker in her eyes. Children, Naomi thought, really do tell the truth before adults train them out of it. Later that afternoon, Naomi stepped into the hallway and found Veronica there alone, examining a family photo on the wall. Without turning, Veronica said, "You seem comfortable here." Naomi answered carefully. "Mr. Carter was kind enough to let me recover." Veronica turned then, her smile smooth and thin. Kindness can be misunderstood, especially by people who have never had much. The words were soft, but sharp enough to cut. Naomi held her gaze. "I'm grateful for help, not confused by it." Veronica's smile widened, though not kindly. "Good. That makes things simpler." From the doorway of his study, unseen by both women, Malcolm looked up just in time to catch the tone, if not every word. and for the first time, he began to wonder whether the elegance Veronica wore so well was only surface deep. The next morning, after Veronica's visit left a sour feeling in the house, Naomi tried to make herself smaller. She stayed useful, quiet, and out of the way. She helped the twins get ready for church, folded laundry Miss Loretta left in the upstairs hall, and made sure Noelle did not forget her Bible lesson sheet on the dining table. It was the kind of morning that should have felt peaceful, but peace in the Carter mansion rarely lasted long when Evelyn Carter had made up her mind about something. By noon, the twins were in the sunroom working on a puzzle, and Malcolm had left for a brief business meeting downtown. Naomi was carrying a tray of lemonade toward the girls when Evelyn's voice stopped her in the hallway. "Leave that for the staff." Naomi turned slowly. Evelyn stood near the staircase, dressed in a pale blue suit, every strand of hair in place, every word already sharpened before it left her mouth. "I was only taking it to the girls," Naomi said. "I know exactly what you were doing," Evelyn replied. "Winning affection." Naomi set the tray carefully on a side table before answering. "They asked for lemonade." Evelyn stepped closer, her expression cool. "Do you think I don't see what's happening?" Naomi said nothing. "That is your cleverness," Evelyn continued. "Quiet women often think silence makes them innocent." The insult landed, but Naomi kept her face steady. Over the past week, she had learned that Evelyn did not need a reason to judge. She only needed suspicion. "I have done nothing wrong," Naomi said softly. Evelyn gave a dry laugh. "A woman appears at my son's gate with no home, no status, no explanation, and within days she is sitting at our table, helping with my granddaughters, moving through this house as if she belongs here." Her eyes narrowed. "Do you take me for a fool?" Naomi's hands tightened at her sides. "No, ma'am." "Then don't behave as if you do." The words came harder now. "Women like you always know how to make pity look respectable. A sad face, a humble tone, a few tears in the right place." Evelyn's voice dropped. "Gold diggers no longer come dressed in glamour. Some come dressed in suffering." For a moment, Naomi could not speak. It was not only the insult, it was the certainty behind it. The way Evelyn had already decided her worth and was now simply dressing judgment in polished language. From the sunroom doorway, a small voice spoke up. "Grandma, that's mean." Both women turned. Nia stood there holding a puzzle piece in one hand, her face serious in the way it became when she believed something unfair was happening. Noelle stood beside her, arms folded, not frightened, just displeased. Evelyn's expression shifted at once. "Sweetheart, this is an adult conversation." Noelle frowned. "But you're talking to Miss Naomi like she stole something." Naomi's heart tightened. Evelyn drew a careful breath. "Go back to your puzzle." Nia didn't move. "Miss Naomi is kind to us." "And she helps with homework," Noelle added, "and she listens when people talk." Miss Loretta appeared from the other end of the hallway just in time to catch the final sentence. She took in the scene with one glance and understood enough. "Girls," Loretta said gently, "why don't you take that puzzle to the sunroom table? I'll join you in a minute." The twins hesitated, then obeyed, though both looked back once before leaving. Loretta turned to Evelyn. "Mrs. Carter, not every poor woman wants your son's money." Evelyn's chin lifted. "And not every warning is cruelty." Just then, the front door opened. Malcolm had returned early. He stepped into the hallway, looked from Evelyn to Naomi to the untouched tray on the side table, and his expression sharpened. "What happened?" No one answered immediately. Then Naomi said, "It's nothing, Mr. Carter." But Malcolm's eyes moved to his mother. He knew that tone. He had heard it all his life. Evelyn folded her hands. "I was simply making something clear." Malcolm's voice cooled. Then let me make something clear too. Naomi is a guest in this house. She will be treated with respect. Evelyn stared at him, stunned more by the public correction than the words themselves. Then, with wounded pride stiffening every step, she turned and walked away. The hallway fell silent. Naomi kept her eyes lowered, but what she did not know was this. From the sunroom, Nia and Noel had heard enough to understand one thing very clearly. Someone they loved had been hurt, and children never forget the people who are kind to them when others are not. That evening, after Evelyn's words left a bruise on the mood of the house, the Carter mansion felt quieter than usual. The twins had gone to bed earlier than normal, though not before each of them hugged Naomi a little longer than they usually did. Nia had done it without saying much, simply wrapping her arms around Naomi's waist and holding on. Noel, on the other hand, had whispered, "Don't listen to mean people. They usually just miss the point." Naomi had laughed softly at that, but once the girls were upstairs, the ache returned. She stood alone on the back terrace now, one hand resting on the railing, looking out at the dark garden. The night air was cool. Somewhere in the distance, water moved softly in the fountain beyond the rose hedges. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, Naomi's chest felt tight. "You didn't have to leave the room, like you were the one who did something wrong." Malcolm's voice came from behind her. She turned. He had changed out of his work clothes and now wore a dark sweater with his sleeves pushed back, making him look less like the untouchable businessman the world knew and more like the tired man who lived behind the gates. "I wasn't trying to make trouble," Naomi said. "You didn't." Malcolm stepped closer, stopping a respectful distance away. "My mother did." Naomi gave a small nod, but her eyes stayed lowered. "She loves her family, I understand that." Malcolm let out a short breath that sounded almost like disbelief. "You're generous." "No," Naomi said quietly. "Just familiar with being judged before I'm known." That made him pause. For a moment he studied her face. Naomi Brooks was not a woman who performed pain for sympathy. Malcolm had noticed that much already. She carried hurt the way some people carried scars under long sleeves, not hidden because it wasn't there, hidden because it had become normal. "I'm sorry," he said at last. Naomi looked up. "For what?" "For bringing you into a house where you have to defend your dignity." The honesty of it caught her off guard. She tried to soften the moment. "I'm still grateful I was brought into it at all." A faint smile touched Malcolm's mouth, but it didn't last long. "Gratitude doesn't mean you deserve disrespect." The words sat between them, simple and true. After a moment, Naomi looked back out toward the garden. "The girls are wonderful." "They are," Malcolm said, moving to stand beside her at the railing. "They pay attention more than people think." "I know." Naomi glanced at him. "Do you?" That earned a longer silence. Malcolm's hands rested lightly on the stone edge. "I know they feel things," he said finally. "I just don't always know what to do with that." Naomi waited. The night seemed to lean closer. "When Danielle died," he said, his voice lower now, "I thought if I stayed functional, that would be enough. I made sure they had the best schools, the best home, every opportunity, every protection." His jaw tightened. "But sometimes I think grief taught me how to provide without teaching me how to return fully." Naomi's expression softened. "Grief can do that," she said. "It convinces people that surviving is the same as living." Malcolm turned to look at her. For the first time, she did not look away. "You loved someone deeply," Naomi continued. "That's clear. But the people still here need the living part of you too." The words were gentle, not accusing, and maybe that was why they reached him. Malcolm looked back toward the garden, but he was no longer seeing it. He was seeing a version of himself he had not wanted to examine in years. "I used to think moving forward meant leaving her behind," he admitted. Naomi shook her head. "Sometimes moving forward is the only way to honor what love taught you." He said nothing, but something in his face changed, not suddenly, not dramatically, just enough for Naomi to see that her words had found a place to rest. They stayed on the terrace longer than either of them intended, speaking quietly about small things at first. Atlanta weather, the twins' endless questions, Miss Loretta's suspicious talent for overhearing anything important, and then, gradually, deeper things: faith, disappointment, the strange ways people survive what should have broken them. By the time Naomi returned to her room, the house felt different again, not healed, not safe, but softer, and downstairs, Malcolm remained at the terrace a little while longer, realizing something that unsettled him more than he expected. For the first time since Danielle's death, another woman's presence did not feel like an intrusion. It felt like peace. 3 days after that quiet conversation on the terrace, peace in the Carter home shattered before noon. It began with a phone call. Malcolm was in his home office reviewing documents when his phone lit up with the school's number. He answered without concern at first. Nia and Noelle's school called often enough about ordinary things: schedule updates, forgotten folders, harmless playground disagreements. But the voice on the other end was tight. "Mr. Carter, this is Principal Warren. We need you to come right away. Nia became very weak during class." Malcolm was already on his feet. "Is she conscious?" "She is, but the nurse wants her seen immediately." "I'm on my way." By the time he reached the school, Nia was resting on the nurse's cot, pale and quiet, trying to be brave in the way children do when they know the adults around them are worried. Noelle sat in a nearby chair, unusually still. "Daddy," Noelle said the moment he walked in. "She was just writing and then she got all dizzy." Malcolm crossed the room and crouched beside Nia. "Hey, sweetheart." Nia looked up at him and tried to smile. "I'm okay." But she didn't look okay. He brushed a hand lightly over her hair. "We're going home and then we're seeing a doctor." As he helped Nia to her feet, Noelle stood too quickly and grabbed the edge of the chair. Malcolm turned. "What is it?" Noelle blinked hard. "I feel weird." That was all she managed before the school nurse rushed toward her. Within the hour, both girls were at the hospital. The Carter family used a private medical wing in one of Atlanta's best hospitals, and the staff there moved quickly. Nurses checked vitals. Doctors asked questions. Blood was drawn. Tests were ordered. Everything happened fast, but not fast enough for Malcolm. He stood just outside the exam room, trying to stay calm for the girls. Inside, Nia asked in a small voice, "Are we in trouble?" Naomi, who had come with them after Miss Loretta called her from the house, stepped closer to the bedside and shook her head gently. "No, baby, nobody's in trouble." Noelle looked up from under the blanket. "Then why does everybody keep using their hospital voice?" Even one of the nurses smiled at that. Naomi sat between the beds and kept her tone light. "Because grown-ups think whispering makes everything feel organized." Noelle considered that. "It doesn't." Nia gave a faint little laugh. When the twins were taken for more tests, the mood in the waiting area changed. Evelyn arrived soon after, composed on the outside but rattled underneath. Veronica came with her, dressed beautifully and speaking in a soft, concerned voice that sounded almost rehearsed. "What did the doctors say?" Evelyn asked. "They're still running tests," Malcolm replied. Veronica touched his arm. "I'm sure it's something minor." Malcolm did not answer. Naomi stood a little apart, hands clasped tightly, praying in silence. An hour later, Dr. Amanda Reeves, the pediatric specialist on duty, came to speak with them, Her expression was calm, but serious enough to steal the air from the room. "The girls are stable," she said, "but their lab work shows they may need urgent blood support while we continue investigating what caused this reaction." Malcolm's face hardened. "Do whatever you need to do." "We will," the doctor said, "but we need to identify compatible donors quickly." Testing began immediately. Malcolm went first, then Evelyn. Veronica insisted on volunteering. Several trusted staff members who had arrived from the mansion offered too. One by one, the results came back. No match, no match, no match. With each passing minute, tension thickened in the waiting room. Naomi watched the doctor speak quietly to a nurse, then stepped forward before she could lose her nerve. "Test me too." Everyone turned. Veronica's brows lifted. Evelyn looked irritated by the interruption. Malcolm, however, only stared at Naomi, reading the certainty in her face. The doctor nodded. "All right." A nurse led Naomi away. The waiting room fell still again. Minutes passed, then more. At last, Dr. Reeves returned with a file in her hand. She looked first at Naomi, then at Malcolm, and something in her expression changed from professional concern to startled confusion. "What is it?" Malcolm asked. The doctor looked down at the chart, then back up. "Mr. Carter," she said carefully, "Miss Brooks is not just a match." She paused. "She's a perfect match." The next hour passed like a storm. No one could see, but everyone could feel. After Dr. Reeves announced that Naomi was a perfect match, the waiting room fell into a silence so complete that even the ticking wall clock sounded loud. Malcolm stood still, one hand braced against the back of a chair, his eyes fixed on the doctor, as if he had heard her wrong. "A perfect match," Evelyn repeated. Dr. Reeves nodded, still studying the chart in her hand. "Yes, a very strong match. Strong enough that I need to ask a few questions." Naomi sat down slowly, her legs suddenly weak. "What kind of questions?" The doctor looked between her and Malcolm. "Has Miss Brooks ever been tested with the children before? Any prior medical connection? Family link? Surrogacy history?" The last two words seemed to strike the room all at once. Malcolm's face changed first. Not openly, not dramatically, but Naomi saw it, a tightness at the jaw, a look in his eyes like a locked room had just been forced open. Veronica glanced from one to the other, confused but alert. Evelyn straightened in her seat, her expression sharpening. "I need to make a few calls," Malcolm said. His voice was calm, but Naomi could hear the strain under it. Within 30 minutes, Bernard Hayes arrived at the hospital. Bernard was Malcolm Carter's longtime attorney, a careful man in his 60s who had handled the family's most private affairs for years. He was followed shortly after by Dr. Simone Whitfield, the fertility specialist who had overseen Malcolm's confidential surrogacy arrangement a decade earlier. The moment Naomi saw Dr. Whitfield, something cold moved through her chest. The doctor recognized her too, not with warmth, not even with surprise, just with the quiet shock of someone realizing a sealed past had found its way back into daylight. Malcolm stepped toward them. "I need answers." Bernard adjusted his glasses. "Malcolm." "Now." Dr. Whitfield looked at Naomi, then at the chart still in Dr. Reeves's hand. "If she's a perfect match, then the records need to be checked." Naomi's fingers curled tightly into the fabric of her skirt. "What records?" No one answered her immediately, and somehow that silence was worse. Bernard opened a secure folder he had brought with him. The paper inside looked old, official, and dangerous in the way truth often does when it has been hidden too long. Dr. Whitfield took the file, scanned the first page, then the second. The color drained from her face. "It's her," she said quietly. Malcolm stared at her. "Say it clearly." Dr. Whitfield looked up. Naomi Brooks was the surrogate. The words seemed to hit every wall in the room before they reached Naomi fully. For one long second, she could not breathe. Then she stood so quickly, the chair behind her scraped against the floor. No! But even as she said it, memories were already rising. The white hospital walls, the contract, the babies, the crying she had never fully forgotten. Malcolm's voice came low and stunned. "You carried my children." Naomi looked at him, tears filling her eyes before she could stop them. "I didn't know it was you." "I didn't know it was you either," Malcolm said, and for the first time since she met him, his control cracked completely. Evelyn pressed a hand to her chest. Veronica said nothing at all. Dr. Reeves looked between them, piecing together enough to understand the situation without all its history. Medically, this explains the compatibility. But Naomi was no longer listening to the doctor. Her mind had already rushed elsewhere, to two newborn girls wrapped in blankets, to the brief weight of them in her arms, to the loss she had spent 10 years trying not to feel all at once. Her hand flew to her mouth. A sob escaped before she could catch it. "Those girls," she whispered, turning toward the exam room door behind which Nia and Noel rested. "Those girls are mine." Dr. Whitfield's voice softened. "Biologically, yes." Naomi's knees nearly gave way. Malcolm moved on instinct, catching her by the arm before she fell. For one stunned moment they stood there together, bound by grief, history, and a truth neither of them had chosen. And just beyond the waiting room doors, two little girls slept peacefully, unaware that the woman who had comforted them, laughed with them, and prayed over them was not just a stranger who had come to stay. She was their mother. The following day, after the truth broke open in the hospital, nothing felt simple anymore. The twins were stable now, resting in a quiet private room while doctors continued observation. The worst of the fear had passed, but something even bigger had taken its place. A truth too heavy to ignore, too life-changing to postpone. Naomi had barely slept. She sat in a small family lounge down the hall, both hands wrapped around a cup of tea she had not touched. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but her face held the stunned stillness of someone trying to fit her whole life into a shape that suddenly made painful sense. Every strange feeling around the girls, every unexplained pull, every moment she had looked at them and felt something in her chest ache. Now she knew why. The door opened quietly, and Malcolm stepped in. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Malcolm Carter looked more worn than Naomi had ever seen him. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his tie gone, his face shadowed by a night without rest. He had spent years believing he had built his life carefully mollo after loss, but grief had never stopped shaping his choices. It had only done so in silence. "I should have known more," he said at last. Naomi looked up. "How could you?" He gave a bitter breath. "Because I made a decision that involved another human life and treated it like paperwork." The honesty of it settled heavily between them. Naomi lowered her eyes. "I agreed too." "You were desperate," Malcolm said. "So were you." That made him pause. It was true. His desperation had simply worn a more expensive suit. Naomi stared down at the untouched tea. "I keep thinking about the day they were born. I only held them for a moment, just long enough to know I'd never forget them." Her voice trembled. "And then I spent 10 years trying not to remember too much." Malcolm's expression tightened. "I never imagined the woman who carried them would end up in my home, in their lives, in—" He stopped there. "In my life." He didn't say it. He didn't need to. A soft knock interrupted them. Dr. Reeves stood at the doorway. "The girls are asking questions," she said gently. "Nothing difficult yet, just why everyone looks serious and why Miss Naomi has been crying." Naomi's hand flew to her mouth. Dr. Reeves stepped inside. You don't have to explain everything at once, but children notice when adults hide important things. Malcolm nodded slowly. We tell them something true, something they can carry. A little later, Naomi and Malcolm entered the girls' room together. Nia was sitting up in bed with a blanket across her lap, looking pale but alert. Noelle had recovered enough energy to be mildly impatient with the hospital pudding on her tray. "Finally," Noelle said. "Everybody's been acting like we're in a mystery movie." Naomi almost laughed through her nerves. Malcolm pulled a chair closer and sat between the beds. Naomi remained beside him, her hands clasped tightly. "There's something important we need to tell you," Malcolm said. The girls looked at each other, then back at him. Nia spoke first. "Is it bad?" "No," Naomi said quickly, her voice soft. "No, sweetheart, it's not bad." Malcolm glanced at Naomi, then continued. "You girls know that families can be made in different ways, right?" Noelle frowned thoughtfully. "Like adoption?" "Like that," he said, "and also in other ways." Naomi's heart pounded so hard she thought they might hear it. Then Malcolm said the words as gently as he could. "Miss Naomi is not just someone who cares about you. She's also the woman who carried you before you were born." The room went very still. Noelle blinked. "You mean, in her tummy?" Naomi nodded, tears rising instantly. "Yes." Nia looked at Naomi for a long moment, as if checking something she had always felt, but never understood. "That's why she feels familiar," she whispered. Naomi broke then, quietly, beautifully. Noelle looked between them, then asked the question only a child would ask in such a moment. "So, does that mean we get to keep her?" Malcolm's face changed. Naomi let out a shaky laugh through her tears. "If you want me." Both girls answered at once. They threw their arms toward her before the adults could say another word. Naomi rushed to them, kneeling carefully between the beds, as Nia clung to her neck and Noelle squeezed her shoulder. And when Noelle whispered, "Hi, Mom," the word went through Naomi like light breaking into a room, long closed. Across from them, Malcolm stood very still, because as he watched the three of them hold on to each other, he felt something inside him begin, at last, to heal. 2 days after the truth came out, the Carter family returned home from the hospital, carrying more than overnight bags. They carried a new reality. Nia and Noelle were still under orders to rest, which they treated like a personal insult. Noelle wanted to know why resting always seemed to involve less fun than being healthy, while Nia had already arranged her pillows, books, and blankets with the quiet seriousness of someone determined to recover properly. Naomi stayed close, but carefully so. She did not want to overwhelm them. She answered their questions when they came, smiled when they called her Mom, and then looked shy about it, and let the newness unfold at the speed children could handle. It was tender, awkward, beautiful, but not everyone in the mansion welcomed that beauty. That afternoon, Veronica arrived uninvited. Miss Loretta saw her first and muttered under her breath. Of course, trouble found the address again. Veronica entered the sitting room with polished concern on her face, but Naomi had already learned the difference between concern and performance. "I came as soon as I heard they were home," Veronica said, setting down a luxury gift bag no child had asked for. Noelle, stretched across the sofa with a blanket around her legs, stared at the bag. "Why do grown-ups always bring things instead of snacks?" Nia hid a smile. Veronica sat gracefully, crossing one leg over the other. "I was worried about you too." "We're okay," Nia said politely. Then Veronica's gaze shifted to Naomi, who was helping arrange the girls' medicine tray. "How wonderful," Veronica said, her voice sweet enough to sound dangerous. "Everything seems to have worked out very conveniently." The room cooled at once. Naomi looked up slowly. "What do you mean?" Veronica leaned back. A woman appears at the gate. She gains everyone's sympathy. Then suddenly, she turns out to be the biological mother of the children in one of the richest families in Atlanta. She smiled without warmth. It's almost too perfect. Nia frowned. That sounds rude. Very rude, Noelle added, but Veronica kept her eyes on Naomi. I'm simply saying some people know how to position themselves. Before Naomi could answer, Malcolm stepped into the room. He had heard enough. Position themselves for what? He asked. Veronica turned, momentarily caught off guard. Malcolm, I was only trying to be practical. No, he said, walking farther in. You were being cruel. The firmness in his voice silenced the room. Veronica straightened. I'm the only one willing to say what everyone else is thinking. Then everyone else has better manners, Malcolm replied. Naomi lowered her eyes, not wanting the twins to sit in the center of adult tension. Mr. Carter, maybe I should go upstairs. No, Malcolm said at once. Then, softer, so only the children would hear the gentleness. You don't leave your place every time someone disrespects you. Those words settled deep. From the doorway, Evelyn appeared, having clearly heard the raised voices. Her expression was more troubled than sharp now. The revelation about Naomi had shaken her certainty, but pride was not something Evelyn Carter laid down easily. Veronica turned to her for support. Surely you see how suspicious this looks. Evelyn looked at Naomi, then at the twins. Nia had reached for Naomi's hand. Noelle had moved closer against her side. Neither girl looked manipulated, they looked safe. Still, Evelyn hesitated. I don't know what to think. That uncertainty hurt Naomi more than an insult might have. So she stood, gently freeing one hand from Nia's and smoothing her skirt. If my being here is causing more pain than peace, she said quietly, then maybe I should leave for a while. No. This time it was Malcolm and both girls at once. Noelle sat up too fast, and Malcolm immediately gave her a look that meant slow down. She ignored it anyway. You can't leave, she said. You're ours now. Nia nodded, calm but firm. You belong with us. Malcolm looked at Naomi, every word deliberate. You belong in their lives. No one is sending you away in shame. Veronica's face tightened. She rose too quickly, all polished composure cracking at the edges. This is unbelievable, she snapped. You're all acting like this woman is some kind of saint. And that was when Malcolm truly saw it. Not just dislike, not just jealousy. Contempt for the children, for Naomi, for anyone who interrupted the picture Veronica wanted. He looked at her with a clarity that had been building for weeks. For the first time, he understood exactly who loved his daughters, and exactly who did not. A week after Veronica's outburst, a different kind of trouble found the Carter mansion. It arrived in the form of a black luxury sedan, pulling up outside the gate just after noon. Naomi was in the garden with Nia and Noelle, helping them press flowers between the pages of an old notebook Miss Loretta had found in the library. The twins had decided this was now a serious science project, though Noelle kept choosing flowers based only on whether they looked dramatic enough. Then Miss Loretta appeared at the patio doors with a look Naomi had not seen before. Tight, unimpressed, warning. Naomi, she said, there's a man here asking for you. Naomi stood slowly. For me? Loretta nodded once. Says his name is Jalen Brooks. The world seemed to tilt for a second. Nia looked up first. Who's Jalen? Naomi swallowed. My brother. Noelle brightened for half a second. Oh, is he nice? Naomi did not answer immediately, and the silence was answer enough. A few minutes later, she stepped into the front sitting room, alone. Jalen Brooks stood near the window, dressed in an expensive navy suit, his shoes polished, his watch gleaming under the afternoon light. He looked exactly like the kind of man he had always wanted to become. Successful, refined, untouchable. But Naomi no longer saw success first. She saw absence. She saw unanswered calls, closed doors, a restaurant table, a man too ashamed to remember the sister who had once carried his future on her back. "Naomi," Jalen said, turning toward her. His voice was softer than she remembered. Careful, almost rehearsed. She stayed where she was. "Why are you here?" He took a step closer. "I came to see you." "After 10 years of silence?" Jalen's jaw tightened. It wasn't 10 years. It was long enough. For a moment he said nothing. Then he exhaled and looked down, as if trying on remorse before wearing it fully. "I heard what happened," he said. "About the girls, about this house, about you." Naomi folded her arms. "So that's how you found me." "Naomi, please, I know I hurt you." The words were there, but the weight behind them felt thin. Naomi did not move. "You did more than hurt me, Jalen." He looked up quickly. "I know, and I'm sorry." She studied him in silence. Part of her wanted to believe him, not because he had earned it, but because some loves do not die just because they are betrayed. Some loves simply become painful to carry. The door behind Naomi opened softly. Miss Loretta entered with a tray of iced tea, setting it down with the kind of deliberate timing older women use when they do not trust a room to behave itself. She gave Jalen one long look that held no welcome in it. "Tea," she said, "for those who came with peace." Then she left. Jalen cleared his throat. "Who is that?" "A woman who knows how to see people clearly," Naomi replied. That landed. Jalen sat down, though Naomi remained standing. "Naomi, I want us to move forward." "Forward to what?" "To being family again." The words might have mattered more if he had not ruined them with what came next. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "And maybe this connection can help both of us. Malcolm Carter is a powerful man. If you spoke to him, maybe he could open some doors, introduce me to the right people, expand my firm's reach." Naomi stared at him. It was all there now. Not regret, not repentance. Opportunity. "You came here for access," she said. Jalen's face shifted. "That's not fair." "No," Naomi said quietly. "What wasn't fair was giving up everything for someone who only remembers me when I become useful again." He stood. "Naomi." She stepped back, shaking her head. "You don't get to use me twice." Silence pressed into the room. For the first time since arriving, Jalen looked unsure of himself. Naomi's voice stayed calm, but it no longer trembled. "I can forgive what you did. One day I may even fully heal from it, but I will not hand you another piece of my life so you can climb higher." He opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing left to argue with. At the doorway, Miss Loretta appeared again, as if the house itself had decided the meeting was over. Jalen looked at Naomi one last time. "I did love you, you know." Naomi's eyes did not soften. "Then you should have acted like it when it cost you something." He left a minute later, his polished shoes clicking across the marble floor until the sound disappeared beyond the front door. Naomi remained in the room, breathing slowly. Outside, the twins were still in the garden waiting for her, and for the first time in a long time, Naomi understood that forgiveness did not mean reopening every door Pain had once walked through. The following evening, after Jalen's visit left old wounds aching again, the Carter mansion settled into an unusual kind of quiet. Not the cold silence Naomi had noticed when she first arrived. This quiet felt different. It felt like a house waiting for something honest to happen. Upstairs, Nia and Noel were finally back to their usual energy. Their doctor had cleared them for light activity, which they celebrated by turning the upstairs landing into what Noel called a recovery headquarters, complete with pillows, books, and a handwritten sign that said, "Authorized happy people only." Downstairs, Malcolm sat alone in the small chapel room near the east wing. The room had belonged to his late wife, Danielle. She had used it for prayer, reflection, and the kind of stillness Malcolm had not known how to enter after she died. For years he had avoided it unless he had to pass by. But tonight, something had drawn him in. He sat in the last wooden chair, hands clasped, staring at the cross on the far wall. For a long time, he said nothing. Then quietly, he spoke. "I loved her." The words sounded strange in the room, not because they were untrue, but because they had been carrying too much alone for too long. "I loved Danielle," he said again, "and I thought that meant my heart had to stay buried with her." He lowered his head, but as he sat there, another face kept rising in his mind. Naomi's. Naomi laughing softly when Noel said something ridiculous. Naomi kneeling beside Naya's bed at the hospital. Naomi standing with dignity under insults she did not deserve. Naomi loving his daughters in ways that needed no performance. Malcolm closed his eyes, and for the first time he understood something that had been forming quietly inside him for weeks. Loving Naomi did not erase Danielle. It did not betray what had been real. It simply meant grief had finally loosened its grip, enough to let life in again. At almost that same hour, Evelyn Carter stood in the upstairs hallway, watching something she had not expected to move her. Naomi was sitting on the rug in the twins' room, helping Noel untangle a bracelet, while Nia read aloud from a chapter book she had insisted everyone needed to hear. Naomi listened with patience, corrected Noel gently when she tried to interrupt every third sentence, and laughed when both girls ended up leaning against her by the end. There was no ambition in the scene, no strategy, no greed, only care. Evelyn stood there longer than she intended. Then she walked away slowly, her own pride making less noise than it used to. Later that night, Malcolm asked Naomi to meet him in the garden. The twins were already asleep, and the soft lights along the stone path gave the roses a silver outline under the moon. Naomi approached quietly. "You wanted to see me?" Malcolm turned toward her. Something in his face made her still. He looked steady, but not guarded, serious, but not distant, like a man who had made peace with something important. "I did," he said. For a moment he simply looked at her, and Naomi felt her heart begin to beat harder for reasons she did not fully trust. Then Malcolm spoke. "My mother owes you an apology." Naomi blinked. "Malcolm." "She does." As if summoned by the truth of it, Evelyn stepped out from the terrace doors behind them. Naomi straightened in surprise. Evelyn Carter, proud and exacting and never quick to humble herself, came to a stop before her. For a second, it seemed as if the older woman might lose courage and leave, but she didn't. "I have judged you unfairly," Evelyn said. The words did not come easily, which made them more real. "I looked at your condition and assumed the worst. I looked at your presence in this house and treated it like a threat instead of a gift." Her eyes lowered, then returned to Naomi's face. "I was wrong." Naomi was too surprised to answer at first. Evelyn continued, more quietly now. "You have loved those girls without selfishness, and you have brought back a kind of peace this family had forgotten." She took a breath. "I am sorry." Naomi's throat tightened. "Thank you." Evelyn gave one small nod, then turned and returned inside, leaving the night gentler than she found it. Malcolm waited until the terrace doors closed. Then he stepped closer. "Naomi," he said, and her name in his voice felt different now. "I have spent years afraid of what it means to let my heart live again." She looked at him, not breathing quite normally. "But somewhere along the way," he continued, "you stopped feeling like someone who came into my life by accident, His eyes held hers. You became the person who brought warmth back into it. Naomi's eyes filled before she could stop them. Malcolm's voice lowered. I love you. The words landed with quiet force. Naomi looked down, overwhelmed by how much she wanted to believe them. I'm afraid, she whispered. I know. She met his eyes again. But I think I'm willing to trust God one more time. And under the night sky, between grief behind them and grace ahead, both of them understood that love was no longer something to fear. It was something to choose. The following Saturday, 1 week after Malcolm and Naomi chose honesty over fear, the Carter mansion woke up carrying a secret. Nia and Noel were the worst possible people to trust with one. They tried. Truly, they tried. But excitement made Noel talk faster than usual, and Nia kept giving meaningful looks to everyone in the house, like a tiny person protecting classified information. Miss Loretta, who had been recruited into the plan immediately, spent most of the morning pretending not to notice. What exactly are you two whispering about? She asked at breakfast. Nothing, Nia said too quickly. Noel nodded. A very private nothing. Loretta raised a brow. Across the table, Malcolm nearly smiled into his coffee. Naomi noticed, and the quiet warmth between them did not go unnoticed by the twins, who looked delighted with themselves. By late afternoon, Loretta asked Naomi to come to the garden. There's something the girls want to show you, she said, which was suspicious enough on its own. Naomi followed her down the stone path behind the mansion, and when she reached the far side of the rose garden, she stopped. Soft white lights had been hung through the trees. The evening breeze moved gently through the flowers. A small table sat nearby with candles and fresh blooms, simple and beautiful, not overly grand. It did not look like a display of wealth. It looked like home trying to say something sacred. Nia and Noel stood near the center in matching cream dresses, both smiling so hard they could barely contain themselves. Naomi pressed a hand lightly to her chest. What is all this? Noel beamed. A surprise. A meaningful surprise, Nia corrected. Then Malcolm stepped forward. He wore a dark suit, but there was nothing distant about him now. His face held the calm seriousness of a man who knew exactly what mattered and had finally stopped running from it. Naomi looked from the girls to Malcolm, and her eyes immediately filled. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Malcolm came to stand in front of her. When I found you at the gate, he said, I thought I was helping a stranger. Naomi let out a shaky breath. But you were never a stranger to this story, he continued. You were part of it long before any of us understood how. The girl stood very still, listening like this was the most important thing in the world. Malcolm's voice softened. You came into this house when everything in it was still carrying old sorrow, and somehow, with patience, faith, and love, you brought warmth back where grief had lived too long. Naomi covered her mouth with one hand. You loved our daughters before you knew they were yours, he said. You loved them when there was nothing to gain, and everything to risk. You gave them comfort, guidance, and truth, and you gave me something I never thought I would have again. His eyes held hers. Peace. Tears slipped down Naomi's cheeks. Malcolm reached into his pocket, then slowly got down on one knee. Behind Naomi, Noel gasped loudly, even though she clearly already knew what was happening. Nia whispered, Noel, let him ask. Malcolm smiled briefly, then looked back at Naomi. Naomi Brooks, you walked through this gate broken, exhausted, and carrying more pain than anyone should have to bear alone. But you were never forgotten by God, and you were never meant to remain outside. He opened the ring box in his hand. Will you marry me and let us build the life we were both led back to? Naomi could not answer at first. She looked at the twins, at Miss Loretta standing back with tears in her own eyes, at the lights, the flowers, the man before her. Then she nodded through her tears. "Yes," she whispered, then stronger. "Yes." Noelle squealed. Nia laughed. Miss Loretta put a hand over her heart. Malcolm rose and slipped the ring onto Naomi's finger, and when he drew her into his arms, the girls ran forward and wrapped themselves around both of them at once. A month later, they were married in a small, heartfelt ceremony, filled with prayer, family, and grace. And when Naomi walked through the Carter gate again, she did not enter as a stranger sleeping outside in the cold. She entered as a wife, a mother, and the living proof that even the hardest beginnings can lead to beautiful destinies. As this story comes to an end, one lesson stands out clearly. True love is not built on wealth, pride, or appearance. It is built on sacrifice, patience, faith, forgiveness, and the courage to stand by one another when life becomes difficult. Naomi's journey reminds us that a painful beginning does not mean a hopeless ending. She was rejected, forgotten, and broken by people she trusted, yet she did not lose her kindness. Malcolm's story also teaches us something powerful. Grief can close the heart, but healing becomes possible when we allow truth, love, and grace back into our lives. And through Nia and Noelle, we see the beauty of innocent hearts that welcome love without pride or prejudice. In my own opinion, Naomi was the true strength of this story. She carried pain without becoming bitter, and she loved without pretending. Malcolm also grew in an important way. He learned that loving again was not betrayal, but healing. As for Evelyn and Jalen, they remind us that pride and selfishness can damage relationships, but humility can still open the door to change. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think about this story? Which character touched you the most? Do you think Malcolm made the right choice? And if you were Naomi, would you have forgiven Jalen? Share your thoughts in the comments. I would really love to hear your opinion. If this story touched your heart, taught you something, or kept you listening to the very end, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss more emotional and inspiring stories like this one. This is Mr. Hope. I will see you in another video.